Well, let's talk about the sacraments then. It just as a short preface, I'm looking at it in terms of the priest's role, and we're all for priests. The priests, the life of the priest is to become the sacraments, and as such, be a transformative agent in the world. So that as we live and move and have our being in this world, we also are living in moving and having our being within the world of God, and the connecting point is the sacraments and the sacramental process of transformation. So just that as a maybe a start off point.
You're quoting almost directly from the general guidelines in the philosophy of sacramental initiation.
Oh, does it show?
Yeah, just a little, just a
Just a
little.
little. Well, the thing that I think that we all experience, we all know to be true, is that when we are performing a sacrament, we are changed. That we enter into a presence that is way bigger than we are, and we become like a vessel for that presence. It's not about us at all, and yet without us, it can't happen, kind of
And
thing. So
going
we're
through us, it alters us on the way to do whatever it is doing.
right. Okay, what about this thing that people have talked about, where if the priest is not functioning, then the sacrament doesn't work? That's one side of the argument, and then the other side says it doesn't matter if the priest is functioning. If the person has enough faith, they will receive the grace from the sacrament.
I mean,
I feel
I
like
think
I've
go,
yeah,
David,
go ahead,
go.
John. John,
No, go, David.
No,
John,
yeah, y'all take somebody take this one.
because I've seen it both ways. I've seen it where a person is so ready to receive the body and blood of Christ that they just pull. First of all, God desires to share Himself, and then the person who's just so given over to receiving that, it pulls it through.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that the most frequent experiences where people feel lifted up are when the context is prepared properly in the liturgical setting, and the priest is really right there doing the job.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, because I think there's all you could. It's super important, for us to do our best, and for to prepare ourselves, to prepare the environment, to do everything we can to do it, to not get in the way, and to facilitate what needs to happen. But 100% it will happen under all the wrong circumstances if that's what the Spirit wants to do. And it's the whole, if the child asks the good father for bread, will the father give a stone or a snake or whatever? No. um it and it doesn't depend on, like, if it depended on our individual worthiness, we're all screwed. So thankfully it's more than that. And like, one of the things I really like about the Holy Order of Man's Communion Rite is the sort of, you might say, the emptying prayer of the priest at the beginning, asking to, really just putting everything else aside, so that light and that presence can be what's active. And you see that happen. Like, I'm not going to say who, but I'm thinking of someone that some of us know, and I was just thinking, like, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna, like, he's going to be the celebrant, how is this going to be? But it just, like, a whole other presence came immediately. And it wasn't even like it was the person I knew. And it was a really powerful liturgy, and a really effective conveyance of the sacrament. And then, like, that left, and the regular person was back. um but that's, I mean, I think that's what should be happening. Like, obviously, hopefully most of us with time get better and better about embodying that not just in that moment, but like as a full life. Um, but um, but yeah, so I'm just agreeing with you in a long-winded way, David.
Yeah. In the Orthodox tradition, we put a lot of emphasis on the preparation of the person that's receiving it, and this is something that was more rigorous in the Orthodox Church than I experienced in the Holy Order of Mans. In the Holy Order of Mans, the giving it to virtually everybody. I mean, that was kind of a watch. But in Orthodoxy, it's not, the communion isn't open to people that are not Orthodox, in part because the standard of preparation is more specific, and you're holding participants to a higher level. You're successfully holding them to a higher level or unsuccessfully holding them to a higher level. That's a separate question. But the preparation is designed to prepare the communicant at a high level. And then there's the question of Orthodox and Catholic being or not being in communion. In the Catholic Church, the Orthodox can receive communion from the Catholic point of view because I'll just say because the Orthodox prepare in a serious way. That the Orthodox don't give communion to the Catholics, because I'm not speaking comprehensively, but I would just say that in the Catholic Church, the preparation standards just aren't the same. That's all. But I'm hitting on a conflict in the transition between the Holy Order of Mans and the Orthodox Church, and it's one which you could see both ways. In the order, we had communion every morning at 6:15 at Raphael houses at 6 o'clock, because we're serving families and everything's breakfast started at 7, so we had to get it done a little earlier. You come in 15 minutes ahead of time and meditate, of which you only had a few people maybe doing that. The communion service was 15 to 20 minutes. You could do it every morning. Now, that was wonderful. That is a great way to start the day. In the Orthodox liturgy, the preparation is greater and the service is much longer. We couldn't do it every day. So we did feel that sense of loss, but then we were gaining other things in terms of preparation. So I do kind of want to acknowledge that issue that we had to deal with.
You know, there was a kind of a mini axial age that occurred right at the in the mid to late 60s, where several revelations came through different channels all at once. There was A Course in Miracles, there was Father Paul, there was Subramanya, there was Murshid Sam. I mean, there was a real, and of course the whole psychedelic revolution, and there are a lot of sociological things that played into that. But there seemed to be a real breakthrough in consciousness right in that time period that that has persisted over time, and then we kind of went through the amalgamation process of it. And as I've often observed, is that at the beginning of any movement, of a movement of the spirit, not political movement or something, but at the beginning of any significant revelation, that's when it's the strongest. I think astrologically that's true, isn't it? Right at the beginning of a sign, that's when it's in its full-blown influence happens. And so the lack of preparation in the order's communion was offset by the sheer power of the presence, so that anybody could come in. And I experienced this so many times talking with people who took communion for the first time in their life of any kind whatsoever. They were blown away by it. It was like they had an instant connection with the reality of the sacrament in that experience of simply receiving communion at our altar rail. So I think we have to take that into consideration as far as of the liturgy, the history, the development of the tradition, all of that. It was kind of like it's really a Kairos moment. There was really a turning point for everyone, like globally, like something was happening, and we were right on the crest of that wave. And so that, and it was the power of that wave, that this coming forth into the world of this new dispensation, you might say, that just, it pushed us through the initiations at a rapid pace, unlike anything that had ever been seen before. Surprising teachers of other traditions, they said, where do you guys come from? So many times we heard that. And I think it was because of that. We were like right on the cusp of that wave. And because of that power, we were able to do things that others who were kind of locked into their tradition could not. They couldn't quite achieve that acceleration or that momentum. That's my sense of it.
I have to give all credit to God. I mean, you got to say God was moving in abundance in a lot of different directions. So if I'm ever critical, I don't want to be critical of God's energy and grace and power, because that was abundant. I can be critical of the brotherhood in what degree it followed through with that and took responsibility for that in the lives of forming people, so they didn't just have a great kind of wander off somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I just have to say, I put the critique and the joy.
Right. Well, I can certainly bear witness to that, because I was there, I believe, present, and watched that wandering off take place. And it was before Father Paul went through transition. It was starting to become, it just started losing its fizzle. There was a preoccupation with getting new members. There was, people were getting older and starting to, move through their various stages of life and becoming interested in other things. A lot of different reasons, but yeah, I can remember that happening. Well, this is turning out well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's we all are coming from different angles on this, but it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe from our different perspectives, a truer image might form in the
Something
middle.
comes, yeah, like all different pieces of the puzzle, as it were.
It's like 3D printing.
Yes. There's you another metaphor, Mike. David can take note of that as he listens to the rewind.
Crocheting with Force Gains. I met with my crochet group this morning. We were showing off our different projects.
Oh, Chris, if I ever tried that, my project would be something to behold. It would resemble the chaos of my life.
I know from experience that the presence of the priest has an immense impact on the recipients, the worshipers' felt experience and conscious experience of the sacraments, especially the liturgy. But I also know from experience that there's a way in which a very engaged priest can be so present to it that it gets in the way. That it's something I always observed in so often observed in Episcopal liturgies. It gets very stagey, very performative, and I guess what I'm driving at is that you can't, as a priest, you can't force it. You can't make the
you got to let go to it.
Yeah, I mean it's for myself, it's when I just do what the tradition tells me to do what's on the page, and be obedient, and let myself be amongst the worshipers, as well as the presider, right? That I
Yeah,
might get a little closer to uh, to doing it better.
I don't know. I think my favorite spot in philosophy of sacramental initiation is the picture of the priest as the woman with the issue of blood, like reaching for the hem of the garment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that to me, just like living with that picture in myself in doing it, like that's been so helpful because like she's just reaching with her whole being
Mm-hmm.
and just reaching to touch that hem, and then what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I've just found that immensely helpful as a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Father,
it's sort of the picture is it kind of there's something very, Jesus turns around, who's touched me? It's
Right.
like
To us, right?
it's kind of like
What?
it's
You
kind of
again?
like, I mean, she was
Yeah,
presumptuous. There was a kind
yeah,
of and
there
like
is.
there's nothing more presumptuous than standing at the altar and saying, "This
Like,
is
who
my
the hell do
body."
we think we are,
I
right?
know, I know. I'm we're yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that
y-
it just, there's such a uh, one of the things that keeps me compelled as a Christian, like, it is the way the Christian faith can put all these things, these contradictories together into a single
Mhm.
experience that is transcendent, but also can see the reality, and like
Mhm.
this woman's like the her need and her
Mhm.
bravery and her brazenness almost, and the faith and the suffering and all of that stuff, just all in one, in
Mhm.
this one human moment. And the fact that illumines, did Sally McFay actually say that a washerwoman couldn't be an image of
Yes,
God?
she did.
I mean, give
Yes,
me a
she did.
freaking break. I mean, look, I
No, that was her
mean,
example as like something you shouldn't do. But then she could never articulate, or at least I never heard, I never in semesters heard her articulate like how you would say like what was or wasn't, like how would you discern other than just your own sense of. So it really became like a play of imagination among the students of like, oh, I think we could, do this, and
yeah, it
just
reminds me this.
disconnected from anything.
I was at a academic Priestley thing a few years ago, and one of the speakers on this panel was going on. He was just really getting into the idea of surfing the web as an analogy as a metaphor for doing theological exploration. It's like, have like
No.
that? No, just like one goddamn thing after another.
Yeah, but see, I think like um um Sally was sort of she was Episcopalian, but I think maybe her theology could have been helped if she had been a more ardent Episcopalian. A friend of mine one
Yeah,
time saw her at church, and she turned and looked at them and said, "Yes, I do attend." But 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 because with the sacramental way, it kind of provides an anchor
mm,
um for uh, metaphor or imagination or image or symbol, where it gets um, pulled into, like a living connection with the physical world and with the tangible.
hmm
Um, and I think keeps things from flying off into like, well, I just feel like God might be like, a flower, and it might be like
yeah.
this.
Just click the next
And
hyperlink, and it'll take you to the next.
uh-huh. Or
Yeah,
or
yeah.
or more manipulative, less good versions of that as well.
Mm,
But
mm.
I think the sacraments are an anchor. But Michael, I feel like you were about to say something and then we veered off. So
it reminded me of something that Father Paul said in his minister's teaching manual about the when lifting up the bread. He said it's like a little child reaching for the cookie jar, wanting from her toes
Yeah,
all the way to the tips of her fingers, wanting those cookies. It's like there's always that element of reaching. this intense reaching, and we reach up and God reaches down. It's like that interlaced triangle symbol. It's
Yeah.
just so much that.
There's a place, it's in Michel Collin, French guy who founded the Renewed Church in France back in the 50s, where he compares the priest both to the chalice, to the empty chalice, they're ready to receive and then to be poured out, and also to Mary, because Mary, through whom Christ enters the world, through the Spirit comes upon her, pregnancy and then birth, and it's like that's the gesture, that's a chalice gesture too. It's like Mary empties herself to become the vessel for this, and that is the picture of the priest. And I
The
mean, he
bride of
actually says
Christ.
he says the Annunciation is the first mass, because the body of Christ becomes physically real in Mary.
The bride of Christ, right? That's
Exactly.
the bride
Yeah.
chamber, the bridal
Yeah.
chamber.
Yeah, exactly. I think these are all just, but these are I think the kind of images or metaphors or pictures that come close enough to our real living experience of trying to do these things, that they give us a language for them instead of taking us away from them.
Yeah.